The city lay cloaked in a restless twilight, shadows creeping through empty streets where once vibrant life thrived. Concrete buildings, graffiti-scarred and crumbling, stood as silent witnesses to a world transformed. At the heart of this desolation, Michael Harris crouched behind a rusted dumpster, clutching a makeshift spear carved from a broken broom handle. His breaths came shallow and fast, eyes darting between flickers of movement just beyond the cracked alleyway. It was supposed to be a simple supply run: grab food, water, maybe some medicine, then return to the safety of the fortified shelter that had become his refuge. But nothing was simple anymore. Not since the outbreak. Not since the dead started walking. Michael's mind raced back to the morning when everything changed. It had begun with news reports about a strange illness spreading rapidly, people collapsing in the streets, only to rise again, mindless and violent. Panic had set in quickly. Governments collapsed. Cities were abandoned. The world as Michael knew it had shattered overnight. Now, weeks into this nightmare, survivors like him were few, scattered, and constantly hunted. The undead, once human, now driven by a primal hunger, roamed freely, their groans echoing through the night like a chilling symphony of doom. A sudden clatter nearby snapped Michael back to the present. His grip tightened around the spear as a gaunt figure stumbled into view. Its skin hung loose, pallid and torn in places, and milky eyes stared unblinkingly. The creature's slow, jerky movements belied a relentless determination. Michael's heart pounded in his chest. He backed up carefully, his every muscle screaming for him to run, but he knew better. Running only attracted more. He steadied his nerves, gripping the spear with both hands, and waited. The zombie turned its head toward him, lips peeling back to reveal jagged teeth. Michael's moment to act was now. With a surge of adrenaline, he lunged forward, driving the spear into the creature's skull. A sickening crunch followed as it collapsed to the ground, twitching faintly before falling still. Breathing heavily, Michael wiped sweat from his brow. There was no time to celebrate, the sound of his attack would draw others. He needed to move. In the distance, the faint glow of the shelter's barricades flickered. It was his only hope. As he slipped through the alley, every sense was heightened. Shadows moved, unseen eyes watching. The city was a maze of dangers. Michael's thoughts drifted to the others he'd left behind. Anna, the medic with a fierce determination, Luis, the quiet strategist, and Sam, the youngest, barely 19 but already hardened by loss. Together, they'd built a fragile community inside the abandoned warehouse, barricading doors and windows, rationing supplies, and sharing whispered stories of hope. Hope felt like a fragile thing now. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed nearby, followed by the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet. Michael froze, pressing his back against the cold brick wall. Through the dim light, more figures emerged, dozens of them, limping and stumbling toward him with outstretched arms. There was no way around. No escape. Michael's mind raced, calculating odds and options. Could he outrun them? Could he fight them all off? The answer was no. Not alone. Desperation surged as he darted into a narrow side street, the horde closing in behind him. He reached a pile of debris, broken wood, shattered glass, twisted metal, and scrambled over it, heart hammering. The groans grew louder, closer. Just as the first undead hand grasped at his ankle, Michael kicked hard, breaking free and sprinting toward the faint light of the shelter. Behind him, the creatures pressed forward relentlessly, unthinking and unstoppable. He burst through the barricaded entrance, slamming the door behind him, and quickly secured the heavy lock. Inside, a tense silence filled the room. Faces turned toward him, eyes wide with fear and relief. "We've got company," Michael gasped, dropping to his knees. Anna moved swiftly, grabbing a crowbar and heading toward the reinforced windows. "How many?" "Too many," Michael replied. "They're all around." Luis stepped forward, eyes cold with calculation. "We can't hold them forever. We need a plan. A way out." The room fell into a heavy quiet as everyone absorbed the grim truth. Their sanctuary was a cage. Outside, the dead ruled. Inside, fear reigned. Michael looked around at the faces illuminated by flickering lantern light. Each one carried the weight of loss, the scars of survival. He thought about what he'd lost: family, friends, a world that no longer existed. But he also thought about what they still had: each other. "We fight," Michael said, his voice steady despite the fear. "Not just to survive, but to live. To find a way through this." Anna nodded. "We'll need weapons, supplies. We have to move before they break through." Luis pulled out a rough map, spread it on the table. "There's an old military outpost 3 miles east. It might have what we need." Sam swallowed hard but met Michael's gaze. "We're not just running from them anymore. We're fighting back." Outside, the groans continued, growing louder, more insistent. Time was running out. As night deepened, the small group prepared. Every movement was deliberate, every breath measured. They knew the road ahead was dangerous. Every step could mean life or death. But one thing was certain: there was no escape from this new reality. The fight for survival had only just begun. The air inside the warehouse was thick with tension. Every creak of the old wooden beams overhead, every distant groan from the restless dead outside, felt amplified in the quiet. Michael's eyes scanned the group gathered around the flickering lantern light, all waiting for his next move. "We don't have much time," he said. "If we stay here, those things will break through the barricades by morning." Anna tightened her grip on the crowbar, her jaw set with determination. "The outpost is risky. It could be crawling with those things too, or worse, hostile survivors. But we need supplies, weapons, anything to give us a fighting chance." Luis unfolded the worn map, pointing at a faint line marking the route. 3 miles east, through the old industrial district. "It's the fastest way." Sam swallowed, glancing nervously toward the boarded-up windows. "And if we get trapped out there?" Michael met Sam's gaze. "Then we fight. We don't have a choice." The group worked quickly, gathering the meager supplies they had: rusty knives, a few bottles of water, a handful of canned goods. Michael checked his pistol. There were only 5 bullets left. Every weapon counted. Anna packed a small medical kit, slipping it into her backpack. "I'll patch you up if we get hurt. But we have to stick together." As they prepared to leave, a sudden loud banging came from the barricaded front door. The dead outside were relentless. "Move!" Michael urged, pushing open the side exit leading into the shadows of the alley. The cold night air hit them like a wall. The moon hung low, casting long, eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. The city was a ghost town now. Abandoned cars rusted in the streets, streetlights flickered and died, and the faintest sound of distant sirens echoed somewhere far away. They moved swiftly but cautiously, every step measured. The street was littered with debris, shattered glass, twisted metal, broken signs. Somewhere ahead, a faint flicker of firelight danced behind broken windows. Michael's heart pounded as he led the group deeper into the industrial district. The buildings here were hulking and deserted, factories and warehouses silent except for the occasional scuttle of rats or the distant groan of the undead. "Stay close," Michael whispered. "Don't make noise." Anna scanned the area with sharp eyes. "I hate this place. Feels like the dead are watching us." Luis adjusted the makeshift backpack slung over his shoulder, clutching a baseball bat tightly. "They are. They always are." A sudden noise, a clatter from the side, froze the group in place. Michael turned, spear ready. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Not undead, but human. "Wait," the stranger raised his hands slowly. His clothes were torn, face smeared with dirt and grime. "I'm not one of them." Michael's gun stayed raised, wary. "Who are you? What do you want?" "My name's Carter," the man said quickly. "I've been trying to reach the outpost too. I know a safer path." Luis narrowed his eyes. "Why should we trust you?" Carter's gaze dropped for a moment. "Because I want to survive. Just like you. And because I know where they're weakest." The group exchanged tense glances. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, but neither was walking blind. "Fine," Michael said finally. "Lead the way." "But one wrong move, and we're done." Carter nodded and began to move forward, darting between shadows with surprising agility. The group followed, nerves taut like wires. The path twisted through narrow alleys and crumbling buildings, the silence broken only by their footsteps and distant, haunting groans. Suddenly, Carter stopped, holding up a hand. "Wait." From the corner of Michael's eye, he saw a slight movement, a cluster of undead, lurking just beyond the broken fence. "They're hunting," Carter whispered. "But if we stay out of the street, we can slip past." Michael swallowed hard and took a deep breath. The tension in the air was suffocating. As they pressed forward, the undead seemed oblivious, their senses dulled by hunger yet surprisingly sharp. One careless sound, one wrong step, and they'd be surrounded. A loose piece of gravel skittered under Sam's boot, and heads snapped toward them. "Run!" Michael shouted. The group broke into a desperate sprint, hearts hammering, lungs burning. The groans multiplied behind them like a terrible chorus. Michael felt hot breath on his neck, heard the scrape of nails on concrete as the undead closed in. They reached a rusted chain-link gate, Carter pulled it open, and they slipped inside a narrow tunnel beneath an old factory. The dark, damp corridor was suffocating. The sounds of the horde faded behind them, replaced by eerie silence. Anna collapsed against the wall, gasping. That was too close. Luis checked the pistol Michael carried. "We can't keep running forever." Michael's mind was racing. The outpost had to be near, but every step forward was a gamble. The city was a maze, filled with death and desperation. "We rest here," Michael said. 5 minutes, then we move again." As they settled into the shadows, Carter looked around nervously. "I don't like this silence. Feels like something's watching." Michael nodded grimly. "It always does." The group shared quiet glances, the weight of their reality pressing down hard. Outside, the world was overrun by the dead, relentless, unyielding, a nightmare without end. Inside the tunnel, a flicker of hope remained, fragile, but alive. They had no choice but to fight. To survive. To find a way through the darkness. Because in this world, there was truly no escape. The stale air in the tunnel clung to Michael's skin like a heavy blanket. The dim light of a single flickering bulb overhead cast long shadows along the damp walls, and every creak or drip echoed like thunder in the stillness. The group rested briefly, catching their breath, but none of them relaxed. Outside, the threat waited, patient and hungry. Carter was still watching the tunnel's dark corners nervously. This place used to be part of the old city's sewer system. If the outpost is near, we're close. Michael nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle even heavier on his shoulders. Every step they took could be their last. Every moment in the open could be their doom. Anna pulled out a bandage and began tending to a shallow cut on Sam's arm. "This isn't going to get better if we don't find more medical supplies." Luis leaned against the wall, his eyes scanning the map by flashlight. The outpost was supposed to be a secure zone, a last stand against the outbreak. If it's still intact, it could be a game changer. Sam shivered despite the warmth of his jacket. What if it's not? What if it's just another trap? No one answered. The silence stretched between them, broken only by distant echoes of moaning and the faint scrape of undead footsteps. After a short break, Michael signaled it was time to move. "Let's keep going. We'll find out soon enough." The tunnel opened out into a narrow alley, littered with trash and abandoned crates. The city's decay was everywhere, walls chipped, paint peeling, windows shattered. The faint glow of dawn struggled through the gray clouds above. "Look," Carter whispered, pointing ahead. There it was, a tall chain-link fence topped with razor wire, guards' towers looming in the mist. The military outpost. From the outside, it looked like a fortress against the chaos beyond. Michael's heart thudded painfully. Hope and fear tangled inside him. "Stay sharp," he warned. They might not be friendly. They crept closer, careful to avoid piles of debris that could betray their presence. The gate was closed, secured with a heavy padlock and reinforced metal plates. Louise stepped forward, examining the lock. "I can try to break this, but it'll take a few minutes." "Do it," Michael said, scanning the perimeter for any sign of life. Minutes stretched agonizingly as Louise worked on the lock with a pocket knife and some improvised tools. Every shadow seemed alive with danger. Suddenly, a sharp noise pierced the air, the snap of a twig, and the group froze. From the guard tower, a voice shouted, rough and demanding, "Who's there? Show yourselves." Michael cursed under his breath. They'd been spotted. "Get down," he hissed, pulling everyone behind a rusted dumpster. A spotlight snapped on, sweeping over the ground with harsh precision. The dead began to shuffle into view, drawn by the sudden noise. "More of them," Anna muttered, clutching her crowbar tightly. The outpost guards were nowhere in sight. The entire place looked deserted except for the flashing lights and barricades. Louise glanced at the lock. It finally gave way with a soft click. "We're clear. Let's move." The group slipped inside, the gate clanging shut behind them. Inside the outpost, the silence was deafening. Crates of supplies lay scattered in the courtyard, some looted, others untouched. Broken machinery and abandoned vehicles told the story of a last desperate defense. "Check every building," Michael ordered. "We need food, weapons, anything." They fanned out cautiously, weapons ready. The once bustling military base now felt like a ghost town, the only sound their footsteps on cracked concrete. Anna found a small medical tent, and her face lit up. "Look at this." She uncovered crates filled with bandages, antiseptics, and syringes. Relief washed over the group. Maybe they'd get through this yet. Luis opened a locked armory and found a stash of guns and ammo, some still in working condition. "This is what we came for." Michael grabbed a rifle and checked the bullets. "We'll need to be ready. The dead won't stay away for long." Suddenly, a low growl came from a dark corner. Michael aimed his rifle just as a figure lunged at them, undead, but quick, vicious. Gunshots rang out. The fight was brutal but brief. The group stood back to back, working together to eliminate the threat. When the last zombie fell, silence returned, heavy and oppressive. They knew this was only the beginning. Outside, the groans grew louder. The horde was gathering. "We can't stay here," Michael said urgently. "They'll swarm the outpost soon." Anna looked around at the supplies, then at the worried faces. "We take what we can and move." Luis nodded grimly. "There's a subway station a mile from here. If we can reach it, maybe we can find a safer place underground." The group gathered their newfound weapons and supplies, every moment counting. As they prepared to leave, Michael glanced at the fading dawn. The world outside was still a nightmare, but inside, a flicker of hope remained. They were far from safe, but they were alive. And in this world where zombies walked the earth, that was all that mattered. The sun struggled to rise, casting a pale gray light over the ruined city as Michael's group left the outpost behind. The supplies they carried were heavy, but their spirits felt momentarily lighter. They had weapons, medicine, and a plan. Luis led the way, map in hand, guiding them toward the subway station he'd mentioned earlier. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual signs of life swallowed by destruction and decay. "This used to be a busy part of town," Anna said quietly, eyes scanning the skeletal remains of cars and shattered storefronts. "Now it's a tomb." Michael kept his rifle ready, senses alert. "Tomb or not, it's the best chance we've got." As they approached the subway entrance, the group paused. The metal grate was rusted but still firmly in place. Sam tested the handle, and with a grunt, he pried it open just enough to slip inside. The tunnel smelled damp and stale, a mix of mold and rust. Shadows danced along the walls as their flashlights pierced the darkness. "Stay close," Michael warned. "If the city above is dangerous, the underground might be worse." They descended the narrow stairs one by one, the sounds of the world above fading away until only their footsteps and breathing filled the air. The station was deserted. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an unsettling glow on cracked tiles and abandoned benches. Luis checked the subway map painted on the wall. We can follow the main line until we find a secure shelter. There's an old maintenance tunnel that leads to a government bunker. If it's still intact, it could be safe. Anna's voice was steady but tense. Sounds hopeful, but we have to be ready for anything. The group moved cautiously down the platform, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Suddenly, a faint noise, something skittering in the shadows, made them freeze. "Did you hear that?" Sam whispered. Michael raised his rifle. "Stay sharp." From the darkness emerged a small group of scavengers, humans, gaunt and desperate, eyes wild with fear and suspicion. One stepped forward, hands raised. "We don't want trouble. Just trying to survive." Michael lowered his weapon slightly but kept his guard up. "Who are you? What are you doing down here?" "We're part of a community," the scavenger said quickly. "We've been living in the tunnels for months, away from the dead above." Luis eyed them warily. "How do we know you're not hostile?" The scavenger shrugged. "You don't. But neither are we." Anna stepped forward cautiously. "Do you know about the government bunker?" "Yeah," another scavenger replied. "It's our home now. Safe, secure, with food and water. You're welcome to come with us. But it's not easy getting there." Michael exchanged looks with the group. Trust was still a gamble, but the promise of safety was too valuable to ignore. "Lead the way," Michael said finally. The scavengers moved quickly through the tunnels, their familiarity evident as they navigated twists and turns with ease. The group followed, tension easing just a little with every step. But the underground was not without danger. At one turn, a loud crash echoed from deeper in the tunnels. The scavengers tensed, weapons drawn. "Zombies," one hissed. "They've been coming closer." Michael's heart raced. They had to move faster. The group quickened their pace, the sounds of the horde growing nearer. Suddenly, from the darkness, a figure lunged forward, an undead creature, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Gunshots erupted. The creature fell, but more appeared, drawn by the noise. The narrow tunnel became a battleground. Michael and Anna fired rapidly, keeping the horde at bay while Luis and Sam covered their flanks. The air filled with the sounds of struggle, groans, gunshots, the shuffling of feet. When the last creature was down, the group gasped for breath, sweat mixing with grime. "We have to keep moving," Michael urged. "The horde won't give up." They pressed forward until they reached a heavy steel door set into the tunnel wall. "This is it," the scavenger leader said. "The bunker entrance." Michael pushed the door open, revealing a steep staircase descending further into darkness. Inside, the air was cooler, cleaner, a stark contrast to the decay above. The group descended cautiously, hope flickering in their hearts. At the bottom, they found a fortified shelter, supplies stacked neatly, walls reinforced with steel plates. A faint hum of electricity filled the air. Anna ran her hand over a control panel. Power still running. This place might just work. Michael looked around at the faces of his companions, tired but alive. "We've made it this far," he said quietly. "But the fight isn't over." Outside, the world remained a nightmare. But here, in the depths below the city, they found a moment's peace. A chance to regroup, to prepare for whatever came next. Because in a world overrun by the undead, survival meant never giving up. No matter how dark the night. The bunker was a strange mix of hope and mystery. Though the walls were sturdy and the supplies enough to last weeks, an unsettling quiet hung in the air. Michael stood at the entrance, scanning the dimly lit interior with cautious eyes. The faint hum of electricity reassured them the place was alive, but it also raised questions. Who had built this refuge, and why was it still operational? Anna was already exploring, her fingers brushing over maps and scattered documents on a metal table. "Look at this," she said softly, unfolding a faded blueprint. This bunker was meant as a command center during emergencies. There's a communication room, medical bay, even a small armory deeper inside. Louise studied the map, tracing a route. If this place is still functional, it could be the key to more than just survival, maybe even a way to call for help. Sam, still limping slightly from his earlier injury, looked around with suspicion. Or it could be a trap. We don't know who's been here or why they left. Michael nodded, his instincts honed by weeks of running from the undead and the unknown. We stay alert. Let's split up to check the key areas: communication, armory, medical. The group moved cautiously through narrow corridors lined with cold steel. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every sound echoed too loudly in the silence. In the communication room, Louise found a radio console, its screens flickering faintly. The power's weak, but it's something. He adjusted knobs and buttons, trying to establish contact. I'm going to keep trying to reach anyone, survivors, military, anything. Meanwhile, Anna discovered medical supplies stacked neatly in a room at the end of the hall. Enough here to treat injuries and maybe even fight infections. This could save lives. Sam and Carter took the armory. Rows of weapons gleamed under flickering lights: rifles, pistols, even some non-lethal tools. Carter's eyes widened as he checked the ammo. This place is a treasure trove. We can finally defend ourselves properly. Michael stayed near the entrance, listening for any signs of danger. Despite the temporary safety, his gut warned him the fight wasn't over. Suddenly, a low vibration ran through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. Louise stopped his attempts at communication. What was that? Anna's hand went to her weapon. Could it be the undead? The sound grew louder, more rhythmic. From outside, muffled footsteps pounded against the bunker's thick walls. Michael's voice was firm. Get ready. They're coming. The undead horde had tracked them here. The group hurried to secure the heavy blast doors, locking them tight just as the pounding intensified. Outside, the groans and snarls grew deafening. Anna checked the monitors. There's no way to hold them off forever. We need a plan, Michael said. Louise, keep trying that radio. Maybe we can find backup or a safe zone. Louise nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. I'm sending out an emergency signal now. If anyone's out there, they'll hear it. The hours stretched on as the group fortified the bunker. Every creak, every distant thud, reminded them of the danger lurking just beyond the steel walls. Tension built, but so did resolve. Anna patched Sam's wound more securely, her hands steady despite the chaos. Carter kept the weapons ready, eyes sharp. Michael stood watch, his mind racing through every possible escape route, every contingency. As night fell outside, the horde showed no sign of breaking away. Then, through the crackling radio static, a faint voice emerged. This is Echo Base. We hear you. Hold tight. Help is on the way. Relief flooded the bunker. For a moment, the impossible seemed possible. But Michael knew better than to celebrate too soon. The fight for survival wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The bunker's cold steel walls seemed both a sanctuary and a cage as the group settled in, hearts pounding with a mix of hope and dread. The faint promise from the radio, help is on the way, was a lifeline, yet Michael knew that no rescue came without risk. They could hear the relentless pounding outside, the undead horde refusing to relent. Every groan and scrape against the doors hammered into their nerves like thunder. Louise kept the radio active, straining to maintain contact with Echo Base. They say a convoy is coming, but it's hours away. We're not safe yet, he reported grimly. Anna paced the medical room, organizing supplies, her hands trembling slightly but her eyes sharp. We need to ration. If we're stuck here for days, we have to be smart. Sam rested, still nursing his injury, but his eyes darted around anxiously. How much longer can the doors hold? What if they break through? Michael stood guard at the entrance, staring at the thick steel. We'll hold. We have to. But if the worst happens, We need an escape plan. Carter, ever practical, examined the bunker's schematics. There's a ventilation shaft leading out on the other side of the building. It's small, but maybe enough for us to crawl through. Anna frowned. That's risky. Crawling through cramped tunnels with the undead outside, it's a nightmare. But if the doors fall, Carter replied, it's our only shot. The group exchanged tense glances. There was no perfect choice, only survival. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the bunker into darkness. Gasps and curses filled the air. Michael switched on his flashlight, sweeping the beam across anxious faces. Louise frantically tried the radio. Power's out. Echo base, do you copy? Static. No response. Anna's voice was steady but urgent. We're blind and alone. This changes everything. Michael took a deep breath. Everyone, stay calm. We know the layout. Stick together. Carter, can you find the emergency generator? Carter nodded and led the way down a narrow corridor to the backup power room. The air was thick with tension. Somewhere deep in the tunnels, the sound of the horde grew louder. Minutes stretched like hours as Carter worked on the generator. Suddenly, a distant crash echoed, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal bending. Michael's heart jumped. They're breaking through the outer defenses. Louise's voice cracked. I can't get the radio back. Anna gripped her med kit tightly. We're running out of time. Finally, a low rumble signaled the generator's revival. Lights flickered back on, casting long shadows on the walls. Louise immediately tried the radio again. Echo base? Please respond. A crackled voice returned, weak but clear. Hold your position. Reinforcements are delayed but en route. Relief washed over them but was quickly replaced by renewed urgency. Michael turned to the group. We have maybe a few hours before the horde breaches. We prepare to fight or flee. Anna's eyes met his. We can't stay here forever. The ventilation shaft is our best chance. Sam grimaced but nodded. I'll try it first. If I can get out and find help. No, Michael interrupted. We go together. If you get stuck, no one's coming back for you. A heavy silence followed. Then they began their final preparations. They gathered weapons, secured supplies, and double-checked the map. The sound of the undead outside was now a constant roar, a storm against the fragile calm of the bunker. When the moment came, Michael led the group to the ventilation shaft. It was narrow and dark, the metal cold beneath their fingers. One by one, they crawled inside, muscles aching from the cramped position. The shaft twisted and turned, stretching longer than any of them expected. Outside, the pounding against the doors grew frantic, the barrier would not hold much longer. Michael's breath was shallow, heart pounding in his ears. Finally, the shaft opened into a hidden tunnel, a forgotten maintenance passage leading away from the bunker. They hurried forward, the weight of every second pressing on them. But safety was still miles away. And the undead were not far behind. The tunnel smelled damp and stale, the faint drip of water echoing off the concrete walls as Michael led the group cautiously forward. Their flashlights pierced the darkness in narrow beams, revealing rusted pipes and cracked walls, but no sign of life, neither undead nor human. Anna's footsteps were quiet but tense. This tunnel might be our salvation, or our trap. Carter checked his weapon, fingers twitching nervously. It feels too quiet. I don't like it. Sam, still favoring his injured leg, followed close behind, breathing heavy but determined. We can't stop now. If the bunker falls, this is our only chance. Louise stayed alert, glancing back occasionally. I wish I could tell Echo Base exactly where we were going. The radio cuts out here. Michael kept his focus sharp. We have to assume no one knows where this tunnel leads. The narrow passage stretched on, twisting beneath the earth. Every step felt like a gamble. Suddenly, a faint noise rippled through the stillness, a shuffling, distant but growing louder. The group froze. Anna whispered, Undead? Michael raised a finger for silence, motioning for everyone to hide in the shadows. The sound grew nearer, a slow, dragging shuffle that set their nerves on edge. Then, a cluster of figures appeared at the tunnel's far end, decayed, shambling zombies moving with relentless hunger. Carter gripped his rifle, aiming carefully. "We don't have enough ammo for a fight here." Michael nodded. "We have to sneak past them." Heartbeats thundered in their ears as they crouched low, inching backward deeper into a small alcove. The zombies shuffled past, their groans chillingly close. Anna barely dared to breathe. Once the last one passed, Michael whispered, "Move now, quickly and quietly." They slipped past, breath held and steps light, until the undead faded behind them. For a moment, relief washed over the group. But the tunnel was far from safe. Minutes later, the passage opened into a large underground chamber, a forgotten subway station, its walls covered with peeling paint and old graffiti. The group blinked against the dim, flickering light from overhead fixtures. Michael surveyed the space. This could be a way out. Luis stepped forward, checking the subway map on the wall. "There's a line leading toward the city outskirts, fewer undead there, maybe safer." Anna nodded. "But we're exposed here. We need a plan." Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed from the far end of the station. Everyone tensed, weapons raised. From the shadows emerged a figure, not undead, but a wary survivor. The stranger's eyes flicked over them, filled with a mixture of suspicion and relief. "Who are you?" the stranger demanded, voice low and cautious. Michael stepped forward, hands raised to show peace. "We're survivors, just like you. Trapped in a bunker, escaped through the tunnels." The stranger's gaze lingered on their faces, then softened slightly. "Name's Elena. I've been hiding down here for days. Zombies have overrun the surface." Anna exchanged a glance with Michael. "Do you know a safe place? Somewhere we can regroup?" Elena hesitated. "There's an old resistance camp a few miles from here, fortified and holding out. But it's dangerous to get there." Sam winced but nodded. "We don't have many choices." Luis glanced toward the tunnel entrance. "If we can get there, we might have a real chance." Michael looked at the group, tired, scared, but still fighting. "Then that's our next move. We'll rest here briefly, then head for the resistance camp." Elena led them to a small corner of the station, where they could hide and regroup. As they settled, Michael's mind raced with plans and doubts. The world above was chaos. The undead were everywhere. Help was still distant. But in that dim subway station, amidst shadows and uncertainty, a fragile hope flickered. The fight for survival was far from over. "Would you like me to continue with Part 8? The air in the underground station was heavy with tension and the faint smell of damp concrete. Michael stood near the group, listening carefully to Elena's stories of the resistance camp, a fragile beacon of hope amid the ruin. The camp was reportedly fortified with barricades, traps, and a handful of fighters determined to hold out against the undead. "We have to move fast," Elena said. "The undead are thick on the surface, but if we time it right, maybe at dawn, we might slip through." Anna checked her gear, her hands steady despite the exhaustion. "We can't afford to make noise. Stealth will be our best weapon." Sam, still favoring his injured leg, nodded grimly. "Every step could be our last if we're not careful." Luis kept his radio close, hoping for any sign of Echo Base's convoy, but silence remained the only reply. Michael gathered the group for a quick meeting. "This is it. We either push forward or get trapped down here. We've survived this long because we didn't give up. Now, we fight smarter." The plan was clear but dangerous: navigate through the devastated city streets at first light, avoid the densest zombie packs, and reach the resistance camp before nightfall. As dawn crept over the horizon, the group slipped out of the station, moving silently through the crumbling cityscape. Shadows stretched long across empty streets, broken windows, and overturned cars. The silence was eerie, broken only by distant groans and the occasional shuffling footsteps of the undead. Every corner turned, every alley passed was a test of nerves. They dodged and hid, weaving through the maze of destruction. But fate was cruel. A sudden screech shattered the stillness, a horde emerging from a collapsed building. Michael's heart pounded as the undead charged, relentless and hungry. "Run," he shouted, firing his rifle to hold them back. The group scattered, weaving between debris, their breaths ragged. Sam stumbled, pain flaring in his leg. Anna grabbed him, pulling him to safety behind a fallen wall. Carter fired repeatedly, covering their retreat. But the undead were closing in. Michael knew the fight was inevitable. With no room to escape, they took a defensive position in a narrow street, barricading with whatever they could find. The horde pressed forward, a tide of decay and death. Shots rang out, echoes bouncing off shattered walls. Luis covered their flanks, shouting warnings. Anna and Carter fought fiercely, their determination fierce despite fatigue. Michael's mind was sharp, calculating every move, every angle. The fight was brutal and desperate. Wounds were taken, but the group held firm. Minutes felt like hours until, finally, distant sounds of engines and shouts broke through the chaos. Echo Base's convoy had arrived. Military vehicles rolled in, heavy gunfire cutting through the undead. The horde began to falter, retreating under the assault. Michael's group was pulled to safety, battered but alive. As they rode away from the battlefield, Michael looked back at the city, broken, haunted, but still standing. The fight was far from over, but they had survived. The resistance camp lay ahead, a new chapter in their battle for survival. In a world where zombies walked the earth, where every day was a fight to live, they had found something precious: hope. That wraps up the full 8-part outline for No Escape, the fight for survival in a world where zombies walk the earth, each part crafted to keep your audience hooked with suspense, action, and hope, all while keeping content monetization friendly. If you want me to help with any other titles or parts, just say the word.